the coaching staff that many have questions on so far. Today, we are going to be talking about the story of how the Raiders have lost everything, starting with their decision to relocate. The move to Las Vegas. The beginning of this turnaround for the Las Vegas Raiders was them simply moving over to Las Vegas. The formerly known Oakland Raiders had been calling the location home for nearly 2 decades. The fans in the area were known as one of the most die-hard groups when compared to any other fan base in the league. However, everybody was caught by surprise when it was announced that they would simply be packing up and switching to a more popular location. The fans there were so upset that there were actually boos and trash thrown onto the field during their final few games in Oakland. Ones that they lost as well, just to make matters worse. The organization believed that the current stadium that was in Oakland was unsuitable for the fans and football in general. Eventually, they came to an agreement with the league to relocate and move their franchise to a better venue. The decision to change where they stood even got vetoed by an NFL owner, the Miami Dolphins' Stephen Ross. Ross was asked about why he was the only owner to say no to the move, and he responded with, "Owe it to the fans to do everything we can to stay in the communities that have supported us until all options have been exhausted." Of course, we have to admit that their brand new stadium is absolutely gorgeous. It's in a nice area with everything inside being top of the line. The problem is the move itself. The Raiders' faithful that has supported them for so long were shut out in Oakland, being forced to travel a good distance just to see their own home games. That travel distance lost them a lot of fans, though there were obviously some new ones that came in from Vegas. Regardless, it was a major and controversial change from the second it was announced. No matter who you ask on the matter, you'll likely get conflicted opinions and thoughts on the move. And that was just the start of it all. The Derek Carr situation. Then came the Derek Carr drama. In some rumors that were just unfair to quarterback Derek Carr, it was said that the organization didn't have faith in him anymore. Carr has been known to give everything that he has over the years. He's been seen getting emotional during press conferences when talking about how passionate he is for the game. And when the team falls short of their goals, he's a guy that shows up to work every single day and never backs away from a challenge. However, fans and the media alike were pushing hard that the team would be getting rid of him soon. This went on for 2 or 3 years before a new era started to come into play. A new head coach in Josh McDaniels was brought in to try and reinvigorate a struggling and inconsistent offense. Carr had a weapon of this caliber at his disposal. Things were starting to look up before they weren't. Later on, in their first season together, McDaniels and the rest of the staff decided that Carr would be benched. This was where the break apart happened. Carr had the Raiders still vying for a wild card spot at the time of the benching. And you don't just usually bench a guy that's played 142 games for your franchise with no warning. Especially when that guy is a 3-time Pro Bowler with great career numbers. When Carr was reported to be benched for those games, Adams immediately took to social media to let out some of his frustration over the matter, and the rest of the team felt it as well. They believed in Carr and knew that he was a good reason for their success, even if it was limited. Adams himself said, "Obviously, I don't think anybody was excited about it in here. Him being one of my really good friends and the reason why I came here in the first place." The decision to bench him was also a sign from the coaching staff that they would be throwing away the remainder of the season and just focusing on the future, which is a move that doesn't always sit kindly to fans and players alike. Time went by, and these weeks saw Carr completely step away from the franchise. He didn't show up to practice at all in the remaining weeks of the season and was reported to be gone indefinitely, with Jarrett Stidham replacing him as the starter. At this point, though, there wasn't any going back. The staff clearly didn't want him there and wanted their own guys instead. Carr refused to come back and renegotiate any contracts and demanded a trade. The team would only allow him to speak to teams if the other organization helped them agree to a trade. If the other team met the asking price, Carr could ink a deal and the trade would later go through. With that happening, Carr met with the New Orleans Saints, and it was clear that the two had mutual interest. However, Carr wanted to get back at the Raiders for how he was mistreated, So he refused to accept a trade to any organization in the league and wanted to be released instead. The team then got stuck into a brutal spot in terms of dead money and lost him for nothing. Carr then opted to sign on with the Saints anyways. So the morale of this story is that they mistreated their franchise quarterback and lost him for nothing, while also aggravating their star receiver and the fan base. The disaster of 2022-2023. But even if you don't think that everything was lost, it was that 2022-2023 campaign was horrendous all over the place. Carr and Adams gave it everything they had out there, but there were so many other holes that were in the roster that they weren't a playoff contender. This team had tremendous issues in terms of consistency on the defensive end. Their coaching was questionable for most of the season, and the other offensive weapons outside of Adams couldn't stay on the field long enough to make a difference in the season. The scapegoat, they got rid of their franchise signal caller. That's not all that happened in this horrendous season. They also chose to part ways with their star tight end, Darren Waller, for absolutely no reason. Waller was shipped off to the New York Giants in exchange for a third-round draft pick. That was the only compensation required for his services. While, yes, Waller had suffered some injuries over the past few years, he was one of the best players at his position when on the field. Shipping him off for no reason, and for that little in return, was shocking. Later, reports stated that Waller was traded because of differences with head coach McDaniels over issues regarding Waller's wedding came about. For the remaining players and fans that were trying to stay positive following the Carr deal and everything else, shipping Waller was another slap in the face. Moving forward, it's still not looking great. They have a franchise tag on superstar running back Josh Jacobs, with him potentially looking to leave as well, considering that they won't spend big money on him. Then Adams could be on the move again, also with him getting rid of his best friend in Vegas and the team clearly heading in a rebuilding or retooling direction. The result. The bottom line here is that the Raiders have lost almost everything in these past few years. Their quarterback, star tight end, a substantial number of hardcore fans in Oakland, and much more. These fans and members in the organization deserve a whole lot better than what they've gotten over the past few years. They better have a plan soon, because we might see Adams and Jacobs on their way out as well, leaving them with virtually no stars left on the roster. They have been lacking defensively the past decade as it is and are mistreating the talent that is remaining. The Raiders need to get their issues figured out, and quickly. It's only going to get worse from here if they can't get it sorted.